It's the Health in the Real World podcast. It's time to start the show with Chris Janke as your host. Here to give you everything that you need when it comes to fitness strategies. We keep it simple and easy. It's your roadmap to get healthy. You don't need equipment and you don't need a gym. Just the right strategies to get you fit and trim.
The Health in the Real World podcast is sponsored by...
Hi, this is Chris Janke, host of the Health in the Real World podcast. When I'm not interviewing podcast guests, I'm training and teaching fitness to my wonderful clients. If you don't have a trainer, coach, or teacher who's helping you with your fitness, text me and I can get you started for free. Text WORKOUT to 408-883-4442. Hello and welcome to the Health in the Real World podcast. I'm Chris Janke and I'm joined today by Nick McDonald. Nick is an intuitive life and wellness coach helping women to thrive and not just survive using a holistic approach. Nick, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Good. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining me today. I know you have a podcast as well. Tell me a little bit more about you, about what you do and how you help people.
Yeah, so I am, like you said, a life and wellness coach. I have a background in research as a librarian. That's where I started my career. And also a background in education. I teach at the college level. So I got started in coaching because I went on my own health journey. Last year in 2021, I started experiencing just like some really weird symptoms that I didn't know what was happening. And that sent me on a long journey of visiting doctors, trying to find out what's happening. And so based on that experience, I kind of wanted to share my experience and, make people more aware, especially women, because as I've come to learn, women are affected 2 times as much by autoimmune conditions as men. And so I coach at a larger level organizations, but my individual coaching, I focus mostly on women.
Got it. What were some of the symptoms that you were experiencing?
Yeah, so it started with I had a problem swallowing, and I thought I had maybe, because I don't know if you take vitamin C, but those pills are huge. So I thought that initially maybe like a pill got stuck in my throat, and so I went to the internet and I tried to kind of find out like what can I do, and I tried some of those things, like drinking soda and that kind of thing, but that kind of stayed around with me, and I didn't understand why that was happening. Later on, I was experiencing symptoms like dizziness. And it's not the kind of dizziness where you feel like you're gonna, I felt like I was gonna pass out, but it wasn't really that heightened to that level. And numbness, tingling, body aches and pains, palpitations. Just like, oh my God, it was just like, as soon as I started getting used to the fact that, okay, I'm having this pain in this part of my body, there would be something else. So that was just so scary. Like I, started going to the doctors. When I went to my primary care, she didn't understand what was happening. Of course, they ran some blood tests. All my bloods came back normal. And so I went to a series of specialists, cardiologists, rheumatologists, neurologists, all the gists. And nobody really knew what was happening until, I don't know, also at that time period, seeing a doctor was like a long wait. So I waited 3 months actually to see the neurologist, and the rheumatologist, which were the key people in helping me get some kind of information on what was happening.
Wow. And so it turned out to be an autoimmune disorder, or what was the diagnosis?
Autoimmune and neuropathy. So neuropathy affects the nerves, and autoimmune affects, it can affect your whole body in different ways. And the weird thing about autoimmune different conditions, even within one condition, it can show up differently for different people. So, I could have an autoimmune condition that's the same as another person, but what I experience, the symptoms that I feel and experience are different from what that person is experiencing. And so it's just so complicated, but even like diagnoses of these conditions is very difficult, because even though the blood tests came back positive, like getting to a diagnosis is more than that.
Right. I would imagine that would be very difficult, especially since, like you said, everybody has different symptoms. So you can't just say, oh, this symptom is related to this, right? It's got to go a little deeper. So as far as your coaching goes, let's transition to like what you're doing now with this. So you have, I'm guessing, like a certain protocol that you do with yourself, and you've gotten to the point where you're beyond this or managing it. How do you take that and transition it to your clients?
Yeah. So I think one of the most important thing is like looking at ourselves as individuals. And I think that's so hard. It's like so hard because we're oftentimes like on the go and looking externally at what we're doing, but we're not really looking internally. And when you think about food, I think that's one of the big ones, right? Like even before all of this, like my experience with food was that I would notice that when I eat certain meats, it didn't, my body didn't function the way normally. I felt out of balance. Same thing with dairy. And I think now we know that a lot of people experience those kinds of things. But paying attention to ourselves on those individual level, and then going beyond that, right, on a mental level, like how do you pay attention to yourself? How do you incorporate like listening to yourself to really get a sense of how you're showing up, how what you're doing in your life is impacting the way you show up, to kind of get a sense of, becoming more self-aware, and then making adjustments that works best for you as an individual.
Like that. It's funny. I just went on a run about 30 minutes ago, and I was thinking a thought very similar to what you just said about, I'm one to look at motivational speeches and see like what the experts say, the gurus, and like, oh, what can I learn about this? And then I'll learn what this expert says, and this one and this one. And sometimes they have very conflicting advice, right? And I got to the point during the run where I said, well, what does Chris believe about this? And I agree with you 100%. There comes a point where even doctors, like they're not inside your own skin. You are the only version of yourself. And it really does have to go down to that individual level. So obviously without naming names or anything, but what are some results that some of your clients have gone through? Like, where did they start? you worked with them for a while, and then what were some results from those individuals?
Yeah. So, I think it's hard, like even for myself, to kind of um, take a shift. And I think at the first place is kind of getting to the point. Unfortunately, a lot of people get to the point of wanting to care for themselves better by having something happen, right? Unfortunately, it shouldn't be that way. But you're going through something. Maybe you're having a major breakdown. And what I've come to find is that stress is a big factor. Like, over the years, I've always heard about, stress. And I think we take it for granted, that small word, but it can uphaul someone's life in such huge ways, right? So someone might feel burnt out at work, right? And they know they're getting to that point, but we're trained to keep pushing. And so taking a step back and really doing that self-assessment to analyze, what does my life look like? What does my schedule look like? What does my calendar look like? Like, what do I have on my calendar? What do I do within a day, within a week? And in that, like, where is time for self? And oftentimes there is no time for self. And so how do you change that? And that is one of the scariest things too, because of how we look at self-care, right? A lot of times we look at self-care as being selfish. And it's really not. It should be incorporated into our life.
Yeah.
And so, something like meditation, it can be intimidating, right? Especially when you're starting out. But instead of thinking at it as starting out with 30 minutes, it might just be 1 minute. And that's how I do it in my life, right? In micro bits.
Yeah.
So taking those small steps, and then when we get to a point where we're seeing results, continuing and not having the mindset that, oh yes, I'm here now, I could stop. Right? Is that maintenance of continuing to go.
Right. So what do you do personally? What are your habits? You mentioned meditation. Do you have a daily meditation practice, or how do you approach that?
Yeah. So I would say it looks very different for me now than it did when I first started. So there is hope, because I know a lot of people get started and they're like, well, I can't quiet my mind. And, I think even for like people who have been meditating for a while, you still get to that point, right?
Yeah.
So I do meditation. It looks different. I was recently at a self-care conference, and one thing that someone mentioned was just doing a body check right before getting out of bed, a body scan. And that's just 1 minute, right? How do I feel? Just going through your different parts of your body. How do I feel? And what do I need today? And that's so simple, right? And it can feel weird and hard at first, right? Something so simple can feel hard because we're not used to asking ourselves these kinds of questions. But that meditation, I've done some qigong, yoga, journaling. I just do different things that feels right for me in different moments. And so I think it might look different for different people. Whatever works for you and whatever time period of that thing that works for you. If it's 3 to 5 minutes of yoga, and then maybe 5 minutes or 2 minutes of meditation later, it's still good to incorporate these things into your schedule, right? In asking yourself, what do I need in this moment? And that's one thing that I started to incorporate into my own life.
Nice.
Asking myself and checking in. What do I need in this moment? And for some people, if you're sitting at your desk, you might notice your neck feels stiff. Maybe you need to get up and do some stretching, right? That's 1 minute.
Right.
Maybe you just got some bad news and you need time to step away to process, or you might need to check in with that specific person that you know is going to respond to you in a certain way that you need in this moment, right? And don't take that for granted, because everyone is not going to respond the same way. And when you're doing those self-assessment, you're looking inwardly, but you're also taking inventory of the people around you and how they show up for you, and how you can best utilize the relationships that you have with each other.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I like what you said about just kind of checking in with your body first thing in the morning. I think I've heard that a lot. People have a mental block around meditation. They think it has to be like this transcendental, like they're, floating and it's like this euphoric experience. It really doesn't. It could be that simple as like, how does my neck feel? How does my back feel? How do my legs feel? My arms, just kind of feeling. And you're taking kind of what would be normally unconscious, and you're just pulling it to your conscious awareness and asking your body to give you the feedback that you need to take an action, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you said, sometimes those actions are like so simple.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to take up a whole hour.
Yeah, 100%. I think I like that too, where you said just start with a minute, like a 1 minute meditation. I think somebody even who has never meditated in their lives, they could go 30 days straight and they could do a minute every day. But, it starts with 1 minute today and then 1 minute tomorrow and then 1 minute. So I like that approach, start simple. And like you said, your meditation practice today does not look like it did when you first started. And that is what's supposed to happen, right? You don't need to go all in. So, Nick, I want to give you a chance to give us a motivational speech. So you're going to be at a university graduation. You're the keynote speaker, and your motivational talk is about how you think that these new graduates can get the most out of their lives. You can go whatever direction you want to go. You can go very big picture, just from your own experience, how to get the most out of your life.
I would say get to know yourself a little bit deeper. That is something that I'm learning now, and only because this thing happened to me and I was able to step away for a little bit from the hustle and bustle of everything. But I think it's so important to get to know yourself on a deeper level. How do you respond in certain situations? What makes you upset? What makes you happy? And also assess your surroundings. Who are the people in your life? How do they show up for you? I guess we go back to the what do you need, right? And I think that's so important, because if we don't know ourselves, it's difficult to show up for other people. And so in taking a step back and just being aware of ourselves, we're able to show up better. And ways to do that, finding time to be silent. In the silence, you're able to really assess things and get a deeper understanding of who you are. And unfortunately, I think for a lot of us, we realize these things like when we're like 40s, maybe, older. But I think the sooner we realize these things, the more we can get out of our lives. And so it might seem like a weird thing right now, as a new graduate, it's like, what? But that's what I would say. Become more self-aware. Take time to sit in silence and get to know who you are and what you need. It was going to help you to show up better for yourself. And when you're able to show up better for yourself, then you're able to show up better for those around you.
I like that. Well, Nick, how do people get in touch with you? Talk about your podcast a little bit, how people can get a hold of you online.
Yeah, so I started Awaken With Me podcast to give more information about health and wellness, everything health and wellness, especially for women, because like I mentioned before, women are affected by autoimmune condition 2 times as much as men, and not just autoimmune conditions. Like in my research, I realized that many conditions affect women more. Crazy. But I'm on the web at awakentoyourpassion.com and on social media at Nick Awaken, which is NICAWAKEN. And I'd love to be in touch.
Awesome. Well, Nick McDonald joining us today on Health in the Real World. I'm Chris Janke. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure. Thank you so much. It was lovely being here.
Thanks for listening to the Health in the Real World show. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. Visit mycorebalance.com to learn more.